Hi guys, welcome to another Castle Games podcast. Today I'm joined by Mason and Brett, who have been our head judges for the last, when did you start, Mason? 3 comps? I think so. More?
Yeah, all of last year.
Yeah, all of last year. So have you done 2? Yeah, so Brett joined us at the pairs comp and the team one. I think Mason started at last year's pairs.
Yes.
Yeah, so what we want to do today is we just want to have a chat with these guys because you see them on the competition floor, you'll see them in our qualifier movement standards. I want to give you guys a little bit more of an insight into where their heads are at with things, why we make the decisions we do. First thing, could you guys just tell us a little bit more about your kind of CrossFit experience and how you got into it, things like that?
For me, started training CrossFit about 7 or 8 years ago. My first comp was the London Throwdown in 2013, January. I was just training out of the Glowboard gym for CrossFit, and then went and I was head coach at this gym for 5 years, and then I've owned it for a year, and like to coach CrossFit and love to compete in CrossFit as well.
Yeah, I started 5 years ago now. Came from a PT background, worked out, same again in a normal standard Globo gym. Got into CrossFit, a couple of my friends started and opened a CrossFit gym. Got into it that way. Moved here 2015, got into Jacana, spoke to Chris about a year and a half later. Went to do my level 1 and then joined part of the coaching team at Jacana, and same really. Compete and coach, love coaching, do it as a sideline to my full-time job.
Yeah, that's cool. So that's kind of why we chose you guys, was just because you were from that kind of, the background of competing CrossFit, train CrossFit, there's a passion there, but also for us it was the movement standards, and it's like one of the massive things with the Castle Games has been trying to build that high level of movement standards and judging standards and things like that. I think going forward, what would you guys like to see in terms of judging and how it evolves and how competitions handle the judging situation? Like, where do you think CrossFit's come and how far has it still got to go?
Good question.
I think for me, judges' teams being more confident in their own ability, being able to say, yes, that was a rep, no, that was a no rep, and being confident that in the background, me, obviously myself and Chris, would have you back, regardless of the decision that was made. I mean, we come up against decisions where they've been made in error, it's just human error, but we do want our judges as a team to be a little bit more confident when they come through, a little bit more vocal as well for me, I think. But yeah.
I think the problem is with a lot of it is the standards that are held within people's facilities themselves, and what's a rep and what's not a rep, where they might train in their own gyms, can cloud judgment on the day. And the more CrossFit facilities open, or the more functional fitness facilities open, the more dilute that is going to be. So I think kind of from HQ, a tighter rein needs to be put on what they want. Because like I said, it's getting dilute now to the point where some gyms may not even be doing half a rep, never mind a rep.
I think that's become, I think this year, I don't know, as the years progress, and I think having 2 opens maybe as well this year, I think things did seem to tighten up a little bit, and definitely at the team championships, the general standard of movement and understanding from the athletes definitely got better. But we've had cases this year, and I think you're right, it's from what they do in the box and what counts, and some of the head coaches letting things slide, because it is a little bit of a fear of upsetting members and telling people maybe you do need to scale it back. There's that perception of scaling that, like, I've done CrossFit this amount of time, I know what I'm doing, but movement standards do change. And I think holding yourself to the highest standard is so important. I think moving forwards, what would you like to see from kind of our judging team and moving into like the individuals next year? What's your expectation of the judges that come on board?
Just for the same judges to turn up if they can, because that continuity is great. You know, we've got we do have a good set of judges that turn up competition after competition after competition, and some of them travel far and wide and stay over, you know.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that. So we love them to come back, and the more frequently we can get the same pool of judges, then the better we'll become as a team, you know.
Yeah, I think the team bit's huge. I think obviously you weren't there for the Sunday at the team champs, but obviously when we went in for day 2, Brett having people there that he'd already gone through everything with the day before just made the job so much easier, and the confidence was so much higher from the judges, I think.
Yeah, it does. It makes a massive difference knowing in advance what your expectation is from a head judge and obviously from a judging perspective as well. It does make a huge difference having that same pool of people coming through all the time, seeing the same faces. It builds a little bit of rapport from a head judge point of view as well. So we get that little bit of banter between the judges and the head judges and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Makes it that little bit easier. People feel a little bit less intimidated on the day, and we have a better relationship, obviously, with myself and Chris.
Yeah. I also think the athletes appreciate it as well, because I've seen now like a lot of the athletes kind of know what's expected from you guys and from the judges, and if the same judges are coming back, athletes start to kind of, they have a little bit more respect, that they know that that person's not just been dragged out of someone's gym and thrown onto a comp floor. They've seen them before. They know that this person is a judge. They are capable of holding high standards.
It's not easy being a judge.
No.
You know, if you're saying we're going back there and a head coach will let movements slide in their gym, movement standards slide in their gym, we're talking about a coach, a judge, that's never met an athlete, and it's nervous times for the judges for the first times, and just as much as the athletes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nervous energy goes on. There's a lot of chat before a award, like a judge is chatting to the athlete and the athlete's chatting to the judge, trying to calm nerves. It's just nervous energy, you know.
I think there was I think the same at the team champs. I think there was a lot of hype on the actual event day itself, and I think there was a lot of hype in amongst the teams, and a lot of the judges were getting sucked into that hype, and I think we'd had a few chats around sort of calming the judges down and keeping them a little bit calmer on the day.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think our judges, we have been super lucky. I would say this year, like comp after comp, they've turned out, and the same ones have come back, and they've grown as well with us, and like they want to compete in the comp, and they want one day they'll judge, one day they'll compete, and that's great. I think one of the things we do still need to work on is maybe it's a difficult one, but for me, I think more athletes should judge comps. For me, judging at comps, I've judged at Rep It Out a couple of times, and it gives you a massive, like, perspective change. Like, it is difficult.
As well.
Yeah, a lot more respect.
More respect for a judge.
100%, because it's so difficult. I remember I judged for maybe 2.5, 3 hours, one after the other, and it got to the point in the workout where my mind went blank. I was just like, because I'd been counting all day, and I'd fairly good at it. I did all right. I didn't make any mistakes, and all of a sudden, I just lost count. And it happens. And I think if you've judged yourself, you have more of an idea of like a little bit more respect, a little bit more kind of perspective on it. I think
people forget the concentration level involved.
Yeah.
On the day, there's a hell of a lot of concentration required by a judge to count multiple repetitions back to back. In teams of 4, say as well, you're counting multiple repetitions for multiple people over and over and over again. And I think people do forget that you are human, you do make mistakes, and it is just human error.
Yeah.
And that for me, I think the whole flying off the handle at your judge and stuff, the emphasis around be a little bit more respectful to your judges comes into have a go yourself.
Yeah.
See how it feels.
I think
the other side of the fence.
That's it. 'Cause it's so tough, and I mean, it's not just the athletes, because there's some, like, the majority of athletes are great, but there's also people on the sidelines, and that's what people forget about. When you're shouting, you're desperate for your mate or your sister or your brother, whatever, to do really well in the workout, and sometimes that is intimidating. If you're judging and you've got people shouting from the sidelines and they're asking you what rep they're on and things like that, it's so intimidating sometimes that
you get called.
Yeah,
and that called a few things along the way.
But it shouldn't happen, and like it doesn't happen a lot, but I've seen it happen. People shouting things, and like I think people just forget almost.
But again, rewind it. It goes back to them people who are watching that person go to the same gym as whatever. They haven't seen the judge's briefing or what is a rep and what isn't a rep, and if they're letting if they're getting away with murder in their own gym, then they legitimately think they are reps.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
they're
true.
not bringing. I've seen clean and jerks, and then feet not brought back in line. They're almost in line, but they're not in line, so it's a no rep. And if they're getting away with them in the gym, then people legitimately don't know any better.
Yeah.
So
And we've seen it almost from coaches who compete. A lot of the time, a coach is so well respected. They could be an amazing coach. They're really well respected in their gym, but it could be 2 or 3 years where they've gone without anyone no repping them.
yeah,
Because everyone just respects them, and it could be that they've just got a mobility issue, they've got a lack of range that hasn't been noted, and bit by bit you get into that habit. I struggle with wall balls. I don't know if I'm getting depth unless someone's there telling me.
Yeah.
And then sometimes that slides, so then all of a sudden they get called no rep, and it's something they're not used to it. They haven't been in that situation.
It's a simple movement standards as well. People look at technical and
Yeah.
they look at new movements and they watch in a brief and they're watching and paying attention. As soon as you say to somebody, make sure you get in depth in a squat, everybody shuts off because they automatically assume they know what depth is
Yeah.
and they know what you're looking for, and they're the problems that we come up against.
Yeah. But I think in general it's like the standards that we hold, we're like firm on them. We aren't going to let our standards lower. And I think sometimes that might come across, someone said that it comes across as being a little bit aggressive, a little bit like I stood on a box to do my briefing. It could come across as a little bit much, but we've got to look after the interest of the majority of people there. And the majority of people want fair movement standards, and if we don't do that, and if we don't put that across, it's on us. And we've seen other competitions where they've struggled with that. If you don't have head judges on the floor kind of not being the bad guys but being the ones that keep everything in line, then things do slip.
I've been in a competition in the past where, and I genuinely think it's more frustrating watching the guy next to you not be no repped for bad movement standards than it is you being no repped for bad movement standards.
Yeah,
Genuinely, it's
it is.
far more frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that's what's like people. For me, I want to be no rep. If I'm doing something wrong, I would hate my mate to have a camera there and to be going live with me doing terrible reps and everyone looking at me no repping. But I also want everyone held to that same standard.
Yeah.
I think that's what your guys' job is really. We make sure all our judges are on the same page, the athletes are on the same page. But in terms of moving forward, I think we're going to keep pushing our standards for sure. We're going to try, I was talking to Brett about maybe trying to get an inventory together of movement standards that can be updated and just try and put stuff out there really.
yeah,
But-
more for the judges, more for athletes.
Yeah,
It's better knowing in advance what the expectation is on the day than trying to take all that in on the day as an athlete. When you're
Yeah.
doing multiple WODs back to back, there's a lot to take in when you're standing around being briefed.
yeah,
So sometimes it does slip, sometimes athletes do forget.
yeah. I think sometimes it's the experienced athletes as well, because you could have done something one way so many times. So for example, a handstand walk, you could have to start your hands behind the line multiple times. In Dubai at the weekend, it was hands could go over the line, feet behind the line. You miss something like that, and all of a sudden you could be the best athlete in the field, but you're arguing with your judge, you don't know what's going on because you thought that you know what the standard is.
Yeah, well, yeah, that perception of it, or the pre-perception. It goes back to an athlete brief in the morning, and then as soon as you say something, everyone trumpets on and goes da-da-da-da-da, and then they miss exactly what you've said. I've heard so many times, you didn't say that in the brief. Well, we did.
Yeah.
You didn't say that, and we do go through all of it, you know.
But that's part of the reason we have to come across quite stern and quite strict and quite like offhand sometimes, because
You didn't say it. Yes, I did.
yeah, and that's the thing. And if we have to be like, no, that is the way. It's this way that we've got to keep the competition fair.
Yeah.
And that's like, it does come across like that, but that way our standards have gone up and up and up every single competition. And if it means being a little bit offhand, a little bit stern with one or two people to keep everyone else on the same page, it's kind of what has to be done really.
Yeah, it's like any sport. It's like you're not going to agree with a referee in a football game all the time. You're not, you know, and you argue. And that's your sport on there. And as soon as you get off the comp floor, it all chills out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's just ways of dealing with it, I think, and I think that's what we were trying to stamp out in the last couple of comps, is the way to deal with that. Not
Charging over with your mate's
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
watch this, watch
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
I mean, we do that, but like speak to us and find the right people rather than
Yeah.
coming back over onto the comp floor or the judge going and finding them, like just
Yeah.
go and find the right people at the right time. We're fair.
Yeah, I think so. And we've started to get a system into place, which by the end of the team champs, I think it was almost rolling its way through, and it was leave your judge, come and find, like the judge has another heat to do, leave them alone, come and find a member of staff. The member of staff will point you to an available member of staff who will then listen to your query, take you off the floor, discuss it. So I was taking people to a quiet area where we can hear each other rather than shout at each other. Because I was raising my voice, but that's because there's music, there's people, like, that's how it happens. But we take everyone off the floor, discuss it, find out what the situation is, and then investigate. I think doing all that away from the comp floor with a member of staff who doesn't have to do anything else at that time, then we can do it calmly and rationally. I think people, as they start to, like, they've just got to think, how is the best way to conduct yourself at this moment in time? And it's never to be storming around and shouting.
Or sitting down cross-legged on the competition floor.
Yeah, refusing to leave. But in general, I definitely think that, like, with athletes and judges and head judges, we're starting to get there. We're starting to get, like, that kind of level of respect and authority that is going to help increase. Like, we get very few, really, complaints of, like, they're getting away with this or they're getting away with that. Compared to, like, a lot of comps I've been to, I think it goes pretty well, really.